Nice day for a party, isn't it? The opening line from Teenage Head's song, Disgusting, very famous opening line for that Canadian band. Join me today as I talk about my time with the famous singer from Canada, from my hometown, and I knew him well, Frankie Venom. Hello and welcome to Tim Conley Drums. Today I am going to talk about my old friend Frankie Venom from the band Teenage Head. His real name is Frank Kerr, and not a lot of people knew that because it's a stage name, obviously, Frankie Venom, but everybody called him Frankie or Frankie Venom, whatever. Not many people, unless you knew him, knew his real name. Anyways, Frankie was quite a character. Now, for those of you that live in Canada, you're going to be familiar with the band Teenage Head. And you're going to know that intro that I said at the very, very beginning for the song Disgusting. That wasn't one of their big hits. And they were quite popular. And they were an early Canadian punk band. They formed in 1975 in Westdale High School. For those of you that are from Hamilton, you'll know the high school I'm talking about. And from there, their first gig was at Westdale High School at one of their dances or something. Because bands used to play at high school dances back in the day. I played at many at my own high school, and it was always a joy. They do not do that anymore at all. Bands, unfortunately, in high schools don't exist hardly at all like they used to. But anyways, moving forward, they turned pro in 1976. They released their first album in 1978, but they released their first album in 1980 that actually got some real, they were noticed. Even in the US, they were noticed a little bit. Now, the band's popularity was mainly in Canada, much like the Tragically Hip, but they had some gigs and some exposure in the US. They were supposed to have some big exposure there, but things happened. One of the band members actually got injured severely right before. I think it was Dave DeRoches got injured, and they weren't able to go and do this gig that they were going to do in the US, which was a showcase gig. And for those of you that don't know what showcase gigs are, it's when band agents, not band, but venue owners, record labels, AR people, they all congregate at this one showcase show, and they watch bands. Sometimes there's going to be a few bands on the showcase. Sometimes it's just showing up at a band's show. And then they determine, are we going to take them on if it's an agent? Are we going to sign them if it's a record label? So there's many, many different aspects of performing at a showcase gig. Anyways, they never got to do the showcase in the States. So their popularity pretty much was in Canada. And these guys worked really, really hard. Now, let me tell you how I met Frankie. Back in the 80s, I was heavy in the indie scene. And I played tons of gigs in Toronto and Hamilton, Mississauga, Brampton, you name it. Everywhere in the GTA, I was playing a lot of gigs. Now, I did some touring in the mid 80s to into the 90s, of course. But mainly, I stayed around the GTA, Greater Toronto area, and was playing the club scene, the bar scene, and the indie scene. And anyways, I was playing at this bar in Hamilton, and Frankie and the band, as I mentioned, was from Hamilton. Anyways, this strange looking guy who I didn't recognize at first comes up to me and says, "Hey man, I really enjoy the band. You guys are really great, and I really enjoy your drumming, and I play in a band, and I'd love for you to maybe sub for us sometime if we're playing in the area. We need a drummer. I'm looking for sub drummers because my drummer is not always reliable." So I was like, okay, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize him, even though he was an extremely recognizable figure. But at the time, I just didn't know, it didn't click. Because, big stars in the Hamilton scene and in the GTA scene, he was, Teenage Head was a big star, but I never thought anyone would ever approach me that's a big star and say, hey, we'd like you to come and sub for us occasionally. So it didn't dawn on me who he was immediately till he told me, yeah, I'm Frankie Venom from Teenage Head. And I was like, what? Frankie Venom? Wow. Now, anyways, I was a little starstruck. Frankie Venom, that's awesome. And I was a big fan of the band. How I didn't recognize him, I don't know. But anyways, once he told me who he was, of course, then I recognized them. Wow, that's awesome. We talked and we ended up becoming friends. But, he was a rock star. He was touring. He was doing this. He was doing that. I mean, we became friends, but there was no texting at the time. Occasionally, I would talk to him on the phone. I would see him around the scene. My band that I was in opened up for Teenage Head a couple times. But really, at the time of meeting him, like I said, we kind of became friends, but we weren't really that close. It wasn't until many, many years later that Frankie and I, became closer, and I actually started hanging out with the guy, and I've got some stories to tell about the craziness of being around him. First of all, sadly, Frankie was an alcoholic, and anyone that knew Frankie knew that he had a severe drinking problem. He was a partier. He was the ultimate rock star. And I mean, the whole band were all drinkers and partiers, and the music is all about having a good time. Plus, like I said, it was punk music, and they were punks being punks. That's what punks are supposed to do, I guess. So Frankie, the band took off with their second album, I think, which I can't remember right now, but I'll put it right here, the name of their second album. And they were quite popular, and especially popular in the Ontario area. So they were playing a lot of shows, a lot of gigs. Anyways, fast forward. I didn't know that Frankie in the early days was, an alcoholic. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then in the 90s, I ran into him. I never did play any gigs for him at the time when they were extremely famous. I never played any gigs. But into the 90s, I was playing a gig in Hamilton, in Hess Village. And for those of you that know the area, you'll know that Hess Village still is to some extent, but it's gone way down. But back in the 90s, Hess Village was the place to be for live entertainment. Anyways, I'm playing again, and Frankie recognizes me. And of course, I recognize him. He comes up to me, hey, Tim, how are you, man? And all this. And he had a strange look to him at that time, which got worse and worse and worse. He was kind of orange, and it was because he was suffering from liver disease from the booze. Anyways, he says to me after the show, I don't have anywhere to live. I'm really struggling. Things are tough. Band's not working too much. And, can you help me out in any way, shape, or form? And I'm like, well, I don't know how I can help you out. Now, somebody warned me too late. I have to go back a little bit. Somebody warned me too late that if Frankie comes around and he knows you and he's asking for a place to stay, do not give him a place to stay, because he is basically going to stay. You're not going to get rid of him. He'll tell you that he's only going to stay a day or two, but he's not. He's going to stay as long as he physically can. So, anyways, it ended up that at that particular time, I really couldn't offer him a place to live. Now, it was around this time as well that he offered me a few gigs. So I ended up doing some sub gigs with Teenage Head, which was fun. I enjoyed the gigs. They were getting hammered and high and the whole 9 yards at these gigs. And I had a couple beers at the time, but I would never I don't do drugs, so there was no drugs. And I remember them saying to me, how can you play these gigs without smoking up and drinking or whatever? And I'm like, how the heck can you play the gigs so high and screwed up on booze? But hey, they played these songs that they were playing so many times that it was no big deal to them. They could do it in their sleep. Anyway, moving forward, I hung out with Frankie. He almost got me arrested for drunken disorderly behavior. Not me, but him being drunk and disorderly in a club, starting fights. Because somebody said something, they recognized him, and somebody said something stupid like, oh, there's the has-been Frankie Venom. Frankie took offense to this. Next thing you know, there's a punch up. At the time, I was heavy into bodybuilding. I think I weighed about 240, and I was huge, jacked. I'll show you guys a picture back in the day of me in the 90s when I got heavy into bodybuilding. The bodybuilding actually started in the 80s, but carried on up until about 2000, and I think my last show in bodybuilding was actually 1999 or 2000, I was thinking. But I still, carried on, not competing, but working out and stuff. I don't bodybuild at all anymore. My hands won't allow it, and it's too hard on my joints and stuff. I still like to go to the gym, but I certainly don't do any heavy weights at all. I'm nowhere near as strong as I used to be. Anyway, so Frankie kind of treated me like his bodyguard. Like, he would act stupid and do crazy things, and then I'd have to bail him out. And it happened many, many times to the point where I was like, this isn't for me. I'm not interested in being your bodyguard. I'm not interested in rescuing you all the time. When somebody says something stupid to you, you've got to learn to take things with a grain of salt. So anyways, I had these on again, off again things with Frankie. We'd hang out for a little while. He'd act stupid. He'd always begging for a place to live, a place to stay. I don't know. He was kind of nomadic. I never actually went to his home and saw where he lived once. He was one of these guys that really lived the punk life in so many ways. I mean, he's nothing like Gigi Allen, but he was the Canadian Gigi Allen. He was kind of crazy, not nearly as crazy as Gigi, but in his personal life, there was a lot of difficulties. Anyways, on again, off again, some, sub form once in a while. I didn't play a lot of gigs with him, but I did play some back in the day. Anyways, another amount of time goes by. I think it was 2003 or 4. And I saw him again. Again, I was playing in Hess Village, and Frankie shows up, and I made a huge mistake. I let Frankie come to where I was living. And exactly what I had been told happened. Couldn't get rid of him. I literally had to, boot his ass out because he just would not leave. And I had to change the locks. And I even though I have mixed feelings about this though, because as much as I loved Frankie, he was the epitome of the punk rocker, and he lived that punk nomadic lifestyle. And I wasn't really interested in the partying and the nomadic lifestyle that he was living. And I was single at the time. So, if I was married or had a girlfriend, they would not have put up with this behavior in any way, shape, or form. But because I was single, I put up with them until I couldn't put up with them anymore, and he had to go. So then I saw him again around 2007 or 8. I think it was late 2007 or early 2008, something like that. And he was orange like you would not believe. He died shortly after I saw him. The last time I saw him, I think it was 2 or 3 months literally before he died. I think he died in 2008. In October, I think he died. And I'll confirm that up here with his date when he died. But I got such good and bad memories of Frankie and my time with him. We had a lot of fun together, crazy fun. I mean, he was a fun guy, but he was highly emotional. He had a temper. He was difficult to be around sometimes. He had a typical rock star mentality. Even though, let's be honest, Teenage Head only reached some fame. They weren't massive stars around the world, nothing like that. In Canada, they were famous. Teenage Head still goes today. They still play. The guitar player was murdered by his son in 2022. And I know the drummer now is Gene. And Gene has his own band. And I'm not sure how much they're gigging anymore. I don't really know. I mean, obviously, when Frankie died, they got a new singer and they carried on and whatnot. But in 2025, I don't really think they're working too much. They might be working a little, obviously, with a new guitar player. And of course, they've replaced Frankie a long, long time ago. But to me, it was never the same without the original lineup. That was the ultimate Canadian punk band. And so like I said, I got bittersweet feelings about Frankie. On one hand, I miss the guy. On the other hand, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to hang around with that guy because he'd get me into trouble. Plus the incident of him just refusing to leave where I was living. Like I said, I was single at the time, and trying to get rid of this guy was so difficult. I threatened him with the police. I'm like, Frankie, you can't stay here anymore, man. You know, oh, just another day. And then another day would lead into another day and another day and another day. And he was always stealing stuff and eating all my food. And hey, man, I'm a musician trying to make a living. Like, I don't have a lot. I was generous with him. I shared with him, but I didn't have a lot. And finally, when he left, I locked the doors and I told him not to come back. You're not welcome here anymore. Now, like I said, I did see him a couple of times after I kicked him out. He was cordial with me. He was fine. The last time I saw him was shortly before he died. He would look terrible. And oh man, I was like, you need to go see a doctor. And he was in rough shape and he was so freaking orange. It was ridiculous from liver failure. But he literally drank up to when he died. Now, the thing is, he didn't actually die from liver failure. I think he had something wrong with his lungs. I think that's what he actually died of. But I'm pretty sure the lungs, he was only 52 years old when he died. He was young. His lifestyle is what killed him. His liver was not functioning well. His lungs weren't functioning well. And eventually everything just shut down. So mixed emotions. I miss the guy though. I mean, like I said, I had some good times with him, some bad times with him, and he was quite the character. So if you get a chance, listen to, for those of you, my American friends, or even some Canadian friends that just don't remember Teenage Head, or never followed them, maybe you're young and you just never heard of them. They were big in the 80s in Canada. So if you get a chance, check out Teenage Head and my friend of old, Frankie Venom. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this story about Frankie. I mean, I could go into so much more, but I like to keep the videos under 25 minutes if I can, or even 20 minutes, because otherwise it's just rambling. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and keep watching. I got lots of new stuff coming up. I want to ask you guys that are my subscribers if you're interested in reactions, lessons, other things other than just me standing or sitting in front of a camera telling stories. Because sometimes those videos do well, sometimes they do terrible. I know one thing I am going to do for sure is I'm going to do some gear reviews, because I got some cymbals and some other things that I want to show you guys. So anyways, thanks very much for watching, and as always, keep drumming. See ya.
Nice day for a party, isn't it?